Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grow With Us. My name is Evan Barton, and I'm your host who helps create conversations with the movers and shakers of a growing tech center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Grow With Us is a podcast that highlights the work of In Tulsa and informs you about the exciting and innovative work being done around the city by its best and brightest. In Tulsa's mission is to connect talented individuals and companies to stimulate economic growth in Tulsa and to create more prosperous communities across the region. Each episode, Grow With Us discusses the growth of opportunities, the growth of communities striving for change, or the tech and innovation that is changing the landscape of Tulsa. This week, we're in conversation with Maria Kim, freelance copywriter and brand strategist at Act House, who will be chatting with me about brand strategies, changing industries, and entrepreneurial incubators in Tulsa's tech ecosystem. Maria, thank you so much for being here. It's so great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. It's my second time ever on a podcast, so
Oh
happy
my
to be here.
gosh. What was the first one? Tell us about it.
My friend Lavala runs a podcast called Generation Us. So I'm from DC, and so when I went for a quick visit last year, he was bugging me to go on just because, first off, I haven't seen him in forever, and in the DMV area, I actually spent nearly a decade working in the restaurant and bar industry. So he just wanted me to come on and chat about restaurants and like just food and beverage all around DC and how much it's changed. And so even though I was reluctant because I am never used to hearing myself recorded, I just, said yes and had a ton of fun. And yeah.
That's what we're going to do today is have fun.
Great.
And a conversation. And we're going to learn some stuff.
I'm already having fun.
Perfect. Let's just get started by, I'd love for you to kind of tell our listeners just your story in whatever way you feel comfortable.
I grew up in the East Coast, born in Philly, raised in Maryland, but DC was home for a while. So even though I went to school for journalism, I got knee deep in the restaurant bar industry because I just fell in love with creating and just eating and drinking.
Yeah.
And so being able to move up in the levels of hospitality was amazing, especially in DC, where like during that time it was so pivotal for the culinary growth. And to be honest, like I didn't see myself leaving that field until one day I just realized, man, I'm too young to be this tired. I had reached my dream job in this beautiful restaurant, and we did well. You know, James Beard nominated, earned a Michelin star, but I realized, okay, let's take a step back and what I really want to do. I wanted to travel, and I wanted freedom and mobility, right? So my older brother, who was already doing that whole digital nomad journey, I reached out to him saying, like, bro, I want to do this. How can I start? So he gave me some tools. And even though at face value during that time, like I did the whole quit my job and move to South America thing and didn't tell a lot of people. So even though it seemed very impulsive at first, like I planned my moves. Like for a year, I was saving and planning and reading and just making sure I was good before I made the move. And the scary part was, I had to just completely switch gears again. So just trying to remember like anything I learned from school. Well, I was I could use writing. So I pursued copywriting. I spent about almost a year in Colombia. What the plan was to travel a little bit more, but obviously COVID happened. But I still had a great time. Like I spent the first 3 months in Medellin just putting my head down, taking up any Udemy, Skillshare, courses in copywriting and marketing and branding, picked up any small time freelance project that I could, was able to snag a full-time position at an e-commerce company, and then began to travel more. So even though COVID hit and the, I guess, practical thing was to maybe go back to the States, that still did not make sense to me because, come on, the U.S. was still going through it during that time. So I figured, where else can I go? So I went to South Korea. My grandma had been back. I had missed her. So it was great to be near family and also in a country where they were handling everything pretty well. And then made my way to Turkey. It obviously got harder to travel. So the Tulsa Remote Program came into my midst.
Wow. Turkey to Tulsa. I love it.
Yeah. It sounds crazy, but honestly, as much as I enjoyed traveling and I did most of it solo, what I really missed was community, right? So when Tulsa Remote came around, I just applied for kicks and giggles. Like, oh,
Yeah.
like this is cute. Oklahoma, 10 grand sounds kind of nice, but the most attractive factor was their promise of community and networking. I knew that I wanted to grow as a freelancer, as a writer, to just grow in a professional setting. So when COVID made it harder to travel, I figured why not? If I wanted to pause for a little bit and plant my feet in the States, I wanted to do it with intention. So I came last January for a quick visit. And despite the pandemic, despite the cold, I had a really good time.
That's awesome.
I met people at Tulsa Remote, 36 degrees, figured, okay, like if I moved here, I wanted to also go back to freelancing again and to challenge myself. The added pressure always makes me move a lot faster and harder. So quit my full-time position, moved here, began working at 36 every day, met amazing people. And now almost a year later, I have decided to stay longer.
Oh, yes. These are like the
Ooh,
bells are
like-
ringing.
Yeah.
Like I think Tulsa Remote probably does like a ring the bell anytime like a remoter wants to stay past
Right,
their
yeah.
year. Or at least we should. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll throw that idea. That's so exciting. I mean, you've had a lot of experiences that I know. I mean, I have literally never been out of this country, and that's probably the thing I say on this podcast the most, just because I talk to people that are like, oh, I got to travel, and it's like, honestly, like I'm sure you value that experience, and like you just told us, you have lots of different experiences, but it really is a nice way to get a fresh perspective. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like going back to South Korea was probably like a really cool way to connect culturally, probably in the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, it has been almost like I haven't been back to South Korea ever since since I was like an adult, right? It was my
Yeah.
first time as an adult, or barely back in the country. And it was also the first time since I was a child where I could spend more than a few days with my grandmother who raised me. And so the crazy thing was, you had to go through crazy logistical procedures to
Mhm.
get in, had to prove my lineage to my grandmother to stay with her, had to
Wow.
download this GPS tracking app to make sure I was indoors for 2 weeks quarantining with her.
Yeah.
And during those 2 weeks, my Korean probably got so much better, and I probably gained about 10 pounds because my grandmother wouldn't let me not eat. But it was great. Obviously, the language barrier was tough, but it was necessary for me. And being in the country where I remembered it differently, but it was a great way to kind of like ease my way back into what I really missed.
That's so cool. I mean, especially South Korea, like I'm a big K-pop fan. So like I will be honest, I've like dreamed about going to Korea someday.
I'm obviously biased, but I think South Korea is one of the most fun, interesting places to go. And I know that lately, it has been put on the map, with film, music, food. But there's so much more past K-pop. Not to knock on K-pop,
Yeah.
but it's just, and I was able to spend a lot of time in Itaewon, which is
Mhm.
the more kind of like liberal, progressive, like younger crowd
Yeah.
who, like I remember Korea as being very like, okay, let's like, do everything traditionally in terms of like work and
Yeah.
facade, but it was a bit more of like, oh, okay, these are creatives. Like these were young creatives and entrepreneurs running like independent restaurants who also were artists and
Wow.
collaborating with each other. And it was like super dope to see.
That sounds cool. I mean, not to jump the gun, but it kind of sounds like Tulsa in a little bit.
Mm.
What is your
Almost?
almost? I mean, obviously there's some definite cultural differences, but like I think you don't necessarily have to compare those two experiences. But like, what has your experience in Tulsa been like? Have you obviously you're staying, we love that,
Yeah.
but have you enjoyed it?
Of course, I kind of joke around to people saying, or like amongst my friends who have loved it here, I feel like we kind of drank the Kool-Aid from
Mhm.
TR. But in all honesty, I think coming in here with no expectation also just helped.
Yeah.
But I came with intention, right? Like I was really proactive on the resources that Tulsa Remote and 36 Degrees provided, which was amazing. It has been shockingly easy Actually, I'm gonna take that back. It hasn't been shocking. It's been very easy to assimilate
Yeah.
into this, but I think it's because I have been so used to, like, in the last couple of years being in foreign countries where there are a lot of barriers into finding community and like growth. But here, it is true what they say about the Midwest charm. I find that even in like the more professional settings here, people are like, it's a lot more relational versus transactional than I would see in like coastal cities.
Yeah.
Even though I'm sure there's still a lot of posturing, but I'm constantly surprised by Tulsa. Like every like week or so, I'm like, oh, like there's this restaurant or they're doing this thing. Like in terms of events, I probably did too much in the first 3 months here, just saying yes to everything, trying to find, my footing in like the social and networking setting. But by month 4 and 5, I'm like, okay, I found my tribe, been more selective on my time, which is very important. And then by month 6, I'm like, ooh, like this feels good. I had a cadence and a stride, was really leaning into like the work that I was doing and like gaining momentum. And that was very energizing. So already by month 6, I'm like, okay, I think my time here isn't done yet.
That's awesome. And at the whole throughout that entire process, were you still freelancing and
I
trying to
was,
figure
yeah.
out how to freelance in a city that you had just moved to? I mean,
For
it's so
sure.
cool.
I was already working with a couple remote clients, which was great, but there's a reason why I stayed at 36 almost every day, just to like meet with other local entrepreneurs or founders that aren't TR, because I know that
Mhm.
Tulsa Remote can be. I mean, I'm so thankful for that program, but it can easy to get stuck in that bubble, right?
Mhm.
And I know that's not reality, so I wanted to just spend a little bit more time in Tulsa and like get to know the actual city, not just through the lens of the program.
Yeah.
So I was able to work with a couple local businesses here, which is amazing. And then I met uh, Dom,
Yeah.
the CEO and founder of Act House. And as much as there's this running joke that, because right now I don't really see Act House as a client, but it's like the work that I love doing.
Mhm.
But there's this running joke that I kind of still separate myself from like them. It's almost because I'm still a contractor.
Mhm.
So, but anyways, yeah, Tulsa has been like, and especially in the innovation ecosystem, very caught off guard with all
Yeah.
of like the growing and building here.
That's so good to hear, just especially from someone that has like your unique experiences and perspectives. Because I think that I get on here every time we have an episode and talk about like what I think about Tulsa, but it really is just refreshing to hear that people experience this city in all of its different flavors. I think that there was something here that had been building that was just waiting for Maria to show up, and like I know that is like almost a cheesy or even like fairy tale way to think about it, but like that's a lot of the reason why the work is being put in, is to catch people that are going to give back. And I think that you're a really great example of like giving back, which we're going to end up talking about, that I'm really excited
Thank
about.
you.
So kind of in this, thinking about your skills and your experiences, you work a lot with brands and companies understanding their brands. What would you say Tulsa's brand is?
I think Tulsa it's like the perfect balance between like small town charm and big city energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we probably that's probably something that people have heard, Grow With Us listeners have heard before. And I think that the only way we can add more to what that is, or kind of dissect what that means, is like the fact that you have access to people in a different way than a big city, but you have the space to not necessarily feel like you're in a one bedroom apartment for $1,800 a month,
Mm.
and like you could have a house.
For sure. I mean, especially like that point you had just made, like I talk to people all the time about this, like being able to just ask someone for a coffee who is this industry leader, right?
Mhm.
It would have taken 5 more steps,
Yeah.
in a bigger city. I think people are a lot more generous with their resources and time here, which is amazing. I feel like that's where you feel like the support. But I also know that it's a privilege. Like I
Yeah.
came in here through TR and the connections that I've made through that program and people at 36, like, man, like, because I also want to remember, like, this is not a normal experience when for other people coming into Tulsa, because I've also spoken to other locals who doesn't even know what 36 is, right?
Yeah.
Or what is kind of happening within the innovation ecosystem here.
Yeah, there's a tailored experience for certain people in this city that I think needed to happen because it almost was a way of showing the people that live here that we are building things that that have the potential to reach more than the people we're trying to attract here. Maria, tell me about this restaurant experience that you've kind of alluded to earlier on. I think that something I'd like for you to kind of highlight here is just like, what do you feel like you learned from those experiences that helped you in your professional career now?
A few key ones come immediately to mind, like interpersonal skills, along with like adaptability and like being able to be nimble on your feet and being mindful, right? And learning also how to be gracious with people, but also standing your ground. I used to be very shy, and being behind the bar, you would get steamrolled if you had no voice. So learning the ins and outs of kind of like operations, but also like still selling, right? But in a very like curated, storied way was extremely fun. I was able to open like 3 restaurants in DC. I mean, it started because it was great money, right? When I was 19, I worked at the Howard Theater, which was amazing. Saw some amazing shows and worked like 6 hours and made stupid money, didn't save any of it. And then worked at some popular restaurants downtown and like near the Capitol and like Chinatown. Opened up Momofuku spot in City Center, opened the first distillery restaurant bar in 14th Street. And then Maidan was my last gig, but that was like, to me, like the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
Like from ownership to food to bar to ambiance. It was a Middle Eastern and North African restaurant, and everything was cooked over an open fire.
Wow.
So it's just fantastic. And so that was amazing because not only was the cuisine so different, and it was this elevated experience, right? It was family style, which also DC wasn't used to. Like, especially in elevated restaurant experiences, it was always coursed meals, right? Very kind of like rigid and structured. But we wanted to kind of go against that, because a lot of other like non-Western cuisines are very communal.
Yeah.
So to like break bread and share bread, and like pass around plates and have that, but in a curated, elevated experience was amazing. But anyways, so learning that it kind of does, I think people, I'm gonna be honest too, sometimes people don't care what they're eating or like drinking.
Yeah.
It's how you sell it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what's the story? And so we would talk about the growers of the vineyard, and we would talk about where it came from and what it meant, and the sauces and like the ingredients. We worked with, a local farmer who'd raised a goat specifically for our restaurant.
Yeah.
And we would butcher it every month and use every part. And so I learned like camaraderie and just work ethic.
Yeah, and product, I mean, that's in a lot of ways it's product marketing, which is in a way what you do now with like copywriting and brand strategies too, about like you're taking your product and dissecting different ways to tell a story. And that story is the hook for eating at your restaurant, or I guess using your technology or using your platform, whichever, in a more of a tech-centered way, I guess.
Yeah, like if you could imagine like different types of guests as different audience personas, right? What's the language, the tone how can I sell this bottle of wine to either a young couple or a family of 4, right? And so being able to because like I love the startup industry because it's like that energy is so contagious.
Yeah.
Everyone is like to like grind and hustle and just work. But then sometimes, most of the time, they just don't know how to tell their story, or it's not reaching the right audience. Yeah. So being able to use my, skills from like being very concise as well in copy editing and writing and from journalism and asking the right questions. I have a lot of fun being able to do that for others, but I end up just reading way more than I write, really, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because you're crafting narratives that I think if you're working with someone, especially in a freelance context too, you're trying to pull it basically out of them. You need to know what they know in order to tell it in the way that they want to tell it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when sometimes they see it, it's like, okay, actually that's not what we want to go with. It's so it's a whole iterative process that I think, we can relate this back to food obviously, but I think in the startup environment and more in this tech scene, it really is just figuring out the ways that these almost like quotidian like activities like getting food or just deciding what coffee you want to drink, like you're saying, what is this coffee? What's the story of this? Like, why should I, as this random person that walked in here, buy this and not that? That is essentially the very fundamentals of like, I think, a startup, but you're just seeing it in a different way. You're kind of seeing that more zoomed in version of like, this is something I can consume as opposed to this is something I can use to build, which is often what a tech startup is.
That's a great way to look at
it. I don't know. I don't really be knowing too much about stuff.
No, that is beautiful. Yeah.
Let's talk about your involvement in Act House. I've heard about it since the genesis of it, and so it's so exciting to hear all of the progress that's been made. But tell our Grow With Us listeners about the program.
Sure. So, Act House just launched Act Tulsa, which is a 6-month accelerated program for startups. Right. It started last summer. Cohort 1 just had their demo day a couple weeks ago, which is super exciting. But for this program, they specifically want to bolster like Black and Latinx founders in Tulsa. They came to Tulsa because there is a particular equity gap that they want to bridge. So I met the CEO and founder, Dominic Artis, in passing at 36 Degrees, right? And that's the beauty of that space. I just would see, we would just, have conversations here and there. I had no idea what he did for weeks until one day we're like, what do you do? I don't know. What do you do? And then when we just began talking, he's like, oh, we actually need a copywriter. That the following week, it just happened that their team was in town, like their designer, developer, and program coordinator. So I sat down with the designer just to talk about what they needed. And in essence, they were like low-key rebranding, right? Because the Act House started as an in-house incubator in Florida, hosting hackathons and prototyping and just forming teams. So Act House, ACT is an acronym for ACT, based on the mythology that the core of every foundation business team, you need an architect, creative, and techie. So bringing that forth, obviously COVID disrupted everything. So that's when they had to pivot. And so they came here. That kind of was a catalyst for Act Tulsa. And but then when I came on, I think my main role, which is I think the most exciting thing that I have done here, is being involved with the development of the ACT assessment. So it's this, like the Enneagram for innovators and creators, right? So it's broken down into 3 main sections. Discovering your archetype, whether you're an archetype, creative, or techie. Also realizing what your subdominant is as well, along with kind of unveiling your innovation mindset, broken down into your appetite for risk, desire for reward, and aptitude for responsibility. Depending on those measurements, if you lean more entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial. And then the last key part, which I think is the most pivotal, especially in this industry right now, is like your team cohesion quotient. So it's like team fit, right? And that is, again, segmented into communication, collaboration, and compromise. And so like the top 3 reasons why most startups fail is because you don't have the right team. So we are trying to fix that.
Yeah, no, you're trying to fix kind of a lot of things with the entire mission of Act House Tulsa being this equity gap filler for Black and Latinx just people in Tulsa not having entrepreneurial space, and creating a space for entrepreneurs and those communities to start from I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but start from maybe zero, or start from an idea that you might not have ever let escape your mouth,
Mm-hmm.
and you have immediately have resources, and from what you're developing, you're allowing people to, or with this ACT assessment, I also need to take this, by the way, because I'm not sure if I'm like
Yeah.
a generalist or what that means. Is
Mm-hmm.
there a generalist fit in this ACT type
You'll
of
be
thing?
surprised. So, low key, when we were taking it ourselves, and this was kind of an anomaly because we didn't even think about this
Hmm.
during our beta development, is that I scored equal parts on architect and creative, right?
Hmm.
So, but the whole essence is to capture your current state. Like, we're not trying to tell you what you are, who you are, but
Forever.
right, because also people will change.
Yeah.
You're meant to evolve, right? But it's like the hope is to provide you like the the language and power and knowledge to
Mhm.
understand that, to understand not where you are but where you could go,
Yeah.
and to give you and to be able to kind of like disrupt old mindsets and barriers, right? Because
Yeah.
like what's been really cool is that, you know, we'll sometimes have people in a career that they've been in 15 years, and then they'll take this assessment and kind of giving them the back end analysis of like how they scored. They realize, oh well, I've always wanted to do this but never
Mhm.
thought like I could. Why? Well, because of this, and like I, you know, grew up in, you know, an immigrant family. I didn't have the resources, but like today is also the best
A
time
new day, a
to
new time.
like
Yeah.
pursue anything. And so
Yeah.
um that's been, yeah, I'm super excited about that. We're gonna roll the beta out real soon.
That's so exciting. Well, I am in admiration of the work that you all do at Act House Tulsa, and just Act House specifically too. Like, I know that it feels like the ecosystem that I was exposed to right before I kind of started in Tulsa, like really responded so well to Act House's presence, by the
Mhm.
fact that I knew people from 36 that were getting involved. I knew Atento founders that were getting involved in kind of this cohort one of the
Mhm.
program, and they just had their demo day. And I
Yeah.
think seeing the full vision, I never doubted it at any point along the way,
Mhm.
but seeing the scale of what you can make someone's
Mm.
idea in such a
Mhm.
short amount of time is
Yeah.
huge.
Honestly, demo day blew us all away. Like,
Yeah.
because I also came in kind of halfway through, and um, you know, being very honest, I told Dom this all the time, is I felt a little bit separate because I was doing a lot of like work with Act House, and I didn't even really know what Act House it was until like halfway through the program. But do by watching the founders do their first initial pitches, and then having them like pitch to investors, local and global,
Yeah.
um, in this crazy stealthy black box in the back of Notion was super cool. And the
Yeah.
like the production value, everything about it was really great. And the whole thing is like investing in Black and Latinx founders. This isn't like a common DEI,
Yeah.
like, you know, like clout
Especially
chase,
in the
right?
venture
It's
capital space,
hmm
which, when you're talking about funders
yeah.
for technology, that you have to have that conversation.
Yeah, people don't realize that this is like the actual ROI. Like this is a real investment.
Hmm.
And with Act House, I mean, this is, I think, just the first step. But
Yeah.
Act House, like this is global, right? Like
Yeah.
we really believe in the power of like diversity,
Yeah.
right? Like cross cultural collaboration. There is You're guaranteed to create and build and just to like expedite innovation.
And it's just creating space for, I mean, I know there's a specific focus on Black and Latinx founders, but it's creating space for identity groups that I think, especially in Oklahoma, I have to kind of or not have to, I get to represent this kind of indigenous perspective. And, and in entrepreneurial spaces, especially in Oklahoma, it feels like there isn't that. And
Mm.
this gives me hope that we're gonna find an indigenous founder out there that's gonna want to get involved in this program, and I hope that they're listening now. That
Yeah.
like there's resources out there, and it's so cool to just know that it really does take creating space, and I think that that's what I've really taken from a lot of these programs starting is that once there's people putting in effort on behalf of other identities that might be different from their own, that's the equity that's going to create and catalyze change. So it's so exciting. I'm like, I love to hear any news about it. To kind of wrap up here, Maria, tell me a little bit about anything that you'd like to plug. How would anyone get involved with or get in touch with you if you wanted them to? Or
Yeah, I mean, anyone can reach me on LinkedIn. Name is Maria Kim. I don't know how many there are on LinkedIn, but you just find the one in Tulsa. I think I might be the only one in Tulsa right now. And for any innovators and entrepreneurs out there, if you do want to get involved in our beta launch of the ACT assessment, if you go to our website, act.house, first off, it's a dope website. And if you want to read through and learn more about what we're doing and what's next, definitely read the website and let me know if you have any questions or want to learn more. Happy to chat and connect. And you can sign up for the deployment of the beta launch.
Thank you so much, Maria, for being on this episode of Grow With Us. For our listeners of Grow With Us, I'd like to plug a few resources that might be helpful for you. If you would like to stay in touch with all of our featured jobs and opportunities at InTulsa, then please join our talent network. You can join at talent.intulsa.com. That's talent.intulsa.com. By joining our talent network, you will get access to our newsletter where you can stay up to date with our latest career advice, featured opportunities with InTulsa partner companies, and our placement success stories. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to be notified when more episodes of Grow With Us are released. Let us know what you think about how we're doing by rating and reviewing. Huge thank you to our editors at Rant9 Studios and Jesse Ulrich. This has been Grow With Us.